So our session for today, for right now, we are going to be discussing about digital inclusion when it comes to national and government public services. So I'd like to start us off with a question directed to Abednego. So I understand we have we have some of the, I'm sorry, let's give a warm round of applause to our next panelist. Welcome. So I'd like to kickstart our session by going through some of the questions that we have. And I want us to explore some of the current and future strategies that we have to ensure universal accessibility of persons with disabilities in Africa. So Abednego, the first question goes to you. Tell us some of the current and future strategies that we have to ensure universal accessibility of persons with disabilities in the digital space when it comes to public and government services, national services.
Okay, thank you. My name is Abaine Gujo. I'm from Ethiopia. I'm Executive Director for Ethiopian National Disability Federation, which is an umbrella union for disability associations in the country. And I'm now wearing as green with white shirt with blue jeans and black shirt, shoes as well. So I'm a wheelchair as well as two crunch user. And my shoulder is a bit narrow than Jen. I mean, a kid, I'm a bit wide. So this is all about me, maybe to explain those who are not visualizing me immediately. Coming to the topic that we are going to be discussed today is digital inclusion in the government as well as in the public sector. Now to the exact point that raised the question is what we are doing now to ensure inclusion and what we are going to be recommend for the future. What is expected from the future from our colleagues also as well, especially from the government and the public sector. Currently, digital inclusion, when we talk about digital inclusion, it's not all about talking inclusion of persons with disability on the digital space like as an agenda, but beyond that, it's a very critical agenda for me now, because when we think about disability inclusion in digital space, in digital era, we need to see first, globalization is coming up, and also we are all trying our best to be hand-to-hand to ensure globalization. So in this system, digital is mandatory. When we talk, the world talk, the people divide into two, like men and women. We should have to divide people into two as well in other dimension, which is called people with disability, and those have no guarantee not to join people with disability. So these two people should have to work for themselves in ensuring inclusion on and digital spaces. So as of my recommendation, government should have to focus first to ensure inclusion of persons with disabilities in their own digital space first, because they have the advertising system, they have web page system, they have Facebook, other social medias, but they should have to be very careful that their informations, their web pages are inclusive or not, so that we will see how far people is benefited from the public in general service. Unless if the they don't think about first themselves or their programs to be inclusive, we cannot talk more about in general inclusion. Because for me, government is really responsible for ensuring this fundamental need of people in the world to ensure globalization. I think this.
Yeah. Dr. Abdel, probably you have something more to add on to that. And because, of course, across all governments, we have policies in place. What role do you think the policies in government that we have, how are they fostering inclusivity of persons with disabilities in the digital space? How do you think we play that role?
Okay, let me introduce myself first. So my name is a little bit long, but I'm Abdelmanam Sharkawi. I'm actually the chairman of the National Academy of Information Technology for Persons with Disabilities. This is actually an affiliate or an institute at the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology in Egypt. I'm actually wearing a black jacket, a white shirt, gray trousers or gray pants, and black shoes. So that's it for the introduction. So thank you for the question. So policies are obviously very important. I am more on the technology side. So yes, so for example, let me talk a little bit about what happened in Egypt lately. So there have been like new policies that have been put into place, particularly when it came to the Law 10 that was released in 2018 for the rights of people with disabilities, and also there is also instituted now the National Council for the Rights of People with Disabilities. So this is very important because this is a regulatory agency that kinds of oversight things. But there are different roles in the government, and each, if you wish, ministry or each organization has its own services, and they're aware of their business model. So also the Ministry of Social Solidarity in Egypt is also doing great efforts when it comes to the rights of persons with disabilities and things like that. But let me go back to technology and how digital platforms can play a crucial role and the inclusion in the digital world and making public services accessible to people or persons with disabilities. So the digital transformation in general is very important because if you think about it, this reduces the burden for movement, it reduces the burden for even, it has an economical factor. So digital transformation, the internet connectivity, all of these things, there are things going on, and I think they're going on in many places, but in Egypt in particular, I'll speak of what I know, right? There has been a lot of progress when it comes to that. So right now, if you're talking about fast internet, getting internet into rural places, this is of an essence here. But on top of that, just having the digital platforms by themselves, this is very important, but there needs to be the accessibility component too. So there have been actually great sessions today and maybe yesterday that I've had the pleasure to listen to. And if we are talking about having access to services in general, one of the challenges that happens is basically, so in the first day there was a discussion about the websites. So if you have websites, do you have accessibility to the websites? For example, yes, we know there is the Worldwide Web Consortium or the W3C, and they have these recommendations or guidelines for access to information. So access to information is very important. So there are guidelines when it comes to technology, how to make these websites accessible. So usually you can have like those plugins or whatever they are, or widgets that can make things more accessible, if you wish. So for example, for people with visual disabilities or not necessarily totally impaired, you can have tools that can help you with contrast, help you with fonts, help you with things like this. You can have cognitive also technologies where you have these text-to-speech things. The website designs themselves on how easy they are to use and navigate, this is also of an essence. So in Egypt, actually, we do have an initiative that we are working on to make websites or governmental and websites that provide services, for example, in education, transportation, different types of services, and we take it into phases where we want to make sure that those websites are accessible to start with, and obviously we work according to standards and things like this. So this is one aspect of things. But also there is another, there was a session in the morning today about, making things accessible, or how to avail services to people having communication difficulties, or the deaf and mute, if you wish. So there are solutions, and there are technological solutions that can work on this. I can give examples. So maybe I'm not sure if I'm taking too much time. Maybe I'll follow up on this.
Allow me to interject onto that. Probably you could tell us from your context from Egypt, what are some of these innovative solutions and that you have in place that have the potential to actually increase the digital accessibility of persons with disabilities in Egypt?
Okay, so technology is developing all of the time. But when we're using something for the public service, right, we need to use something that is robust and reliable, right? So let me give an example for something, and actually there are some examples in the world that uses something like this. So we have instituted a relay center in Egypt. This was instituted maybe almost 5 years ago. And if we are talking about services, one of the most important services are the emergency services. So if you want to call the police, for example, right? If you want to call an ambulance, if you have a fire going on, God forbid, right? Things like that. So we started with this. So by doing a relay center. So this is a 24/7 service. It's actually a call center, but with video. So you have sign language agents there. So those who respond by an application, and actually it improved with time. So we had releases. It works on Android. It works on iOS. It has direct connectivity. Even, this application was available to the public for free. Even, I think at one point, the Ministry of Communications mandated that the package doesn't take from the package, from your data package. So you can call instantaneously this center. It gets you in touch with the police, for example, with a direct line with a very quick response. So this maybe is going to the previous session, right? If you're needing emergency services. So this was one step, and then we also added to it some other features, which is like an instant translator, right? So when you go to the supermarket, you go to any other place, if you need a translator, right, you have this device with you, you can use it. So this is why when I started, I said, if you're having internet connectivity and technology, it's very important, right? And we try to build on these things. Obviously, the technology can be pushed further, right? We're trying to fill a gap till all other services are accessible. So we have other examples where we went directly with other service providers, for example, like with the Ministry of Interior Affairs for getting your passports or whatever, or even electricity, and we did other solutions that are based on other technological aspects. Maybe I'll talk later on about it. So,
thank you so much, Dr. Abdel, for your insights. Right about now, I'd like to give Madame Balkisse an opportunity to introduce herself. Welcome.
Je parle français. Je vais parler français, donc je suis plus francophone que anglophone. Donc je suis ravie d'être présente à cet événement crucial dédié au handicap et à l'accessibilité numérique en Afrique. Je m'appelle Balkisse Hassan, je suis originaire de Djibouti. Je suis une femme à la peau noire. J'ai vêtu d'un pantalon et d'une veste marron avec une châle sur ma tête. bien qu'on voit un peu mes cheveux. Donc, en tant que chef de service de technologie, d'information et de la communication à l'Agence nationale des personnes handicapées à Djibouti, je suis très honorée de partager avec vous notre approche gouvernementale en matière d'accès aux défis plutôt du handicap et à l'accessibilité numérique à Djibouti. Donc, notre gouvernement, le gouvernement djiboutien, répond pleinement aux besoins des personnes handicapées à Djibouti. Donc, nous allons voir plus tard une présentation. La présentation est faite en anglais, mais je vais parler en français. Ok, donc je travaille à l'Agence nationale des personnes handicapées à Djibouti, qui a été créée en 2018. Elle est rattachée à la présidence de la République directement et elle coordonne les directions politiques qui viennent sous la direction, enfin sous la présidence de la République. Donc certaines conventions, certaines lois législatives ont été mises. Donc en 2018, une loi a été promulguée, création nationale de l'Agence nationale des personnes handicapées, une loi relative à la promotion et la protection aux personnes à besoins spéciaux, un décret spécial provision de l'employabilité des personnes handicapées. Un décret a été établi sous l'inclusion. Donc, je vois un peu mal. Je m'excuse. Donc, un décret portant institution de la carte mobilité d'inclusion a été promulgué. Une loi portant adoption de la stratégie nationale du handicap couvrant la période 2021-2025 de la République de Djibouti a été promulguée en 2021. Une loi et 3 décrets, une abrégeant et remplaçant les dispositions de la loi relative à la promotion et protection des droits des personnes à besoins spéciaux, un décret portant adoption du plan d'action national 2022-2024 de la stratégie du handicap qui couvrait la période de 2021-2025 a été promulgué également. Un décret portant création du comité national technique chargé de suivi de la stratégie nationale du handicap et un décret également, toujours en 2022, portant création du Grand Prix de chef de l'État pour la promotion des personnes handicapées. Donc en 2023, en 2023, donc une portant création du fonds de soutien pour le handicap, un décret portant nomination du membre du comité de gestion du fonds de soutien du handicap, un décret fixant l'organisation et les modalités de fonctionnement du comité de gestion du fonds de soutien du handicap a été également promulgué toujours en 2023. Donc, quelles sont les réalisations notables en 2019 à 2023 de l'Agence nationale des personnes handicapées à Djibouti? Donc, une enquête des prévalences du handicap a été réalisée en 2019. C'était la première enquête d'ailleurs spécifique sur le handicap, réalisée sous la méthodologie du groupe Washington. Et elle a été commanditée par l'Agence nationale des personnes handicapées et réalisée en décembre 2019 par l'Institut national de la statistique de Djibouti, avec un taux de prévalence de 8,5% de la population djiboutienne. Et par la suite, nous avons commencé à faire des campagnes, des enregistrements biométriques jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Nous continuons de faire là même actuellement. Les assistants sociaux et même les employés de l'agence sont actuellement en train d'enrôler des personnes handicapés alités chez eux et très loin même dans les régions. Donc, afin d'identifier ces 8,5%. Par la suite, nous avons mis en place une stratégie nationale du handicap qui couvre de la période de 2021 à 2025. Cette stratégie a été élaborée à la suite de l'enquête de prévalence fondée sur un plan d'action qui vise à répondre à un besoin identifié et promouvoir également une société inclusive. En 2023, nous avons revu la stratégie nationale du handicap pour voir un peu si cette stratégie couvrait de 2021 à 2025. Donc en 2023, nous avons essayé de voir si les actions qui ont été mises dans ces stratégies ont été réalisées, qu'est-ce qui reste à faire pour les 2 ans restants, Donc, des colloques de mi-parcours ont été réalisés pour voir un peu qu'est-ce qui nous reste à faire et pourquoi certaines actions n'ont pas été réalisées. Par la suite, des accords de partenariat se sont noués avec les ministères sectoriels, les systèmes des Nations Unies, les partenaires financiers. Et actuellement, en 2024, nous sommes en train de réajuster notre plan d'action afin de finaliser et de faire en sorte que ces stratégies soient finalisées bel et bien. Donc, en termes de technologie, d'information et de la communication à l'agence, donc nous avons un système intégré de gestion des personnes handicapées. Donc ce système, c'est une solution moderne qui, dans un premier temps, enrôle les personnes handicapées pour identifier et savoir un peu leur biométrique. Et chaque personne va recevoir à ce moment-là un numéro unique avec une carte de mobilité d'inclusion. Et cette carte leur permettra de revenir. Et dans un deuxième temps, ce système nous permet également d'enregistrer leurs besoins, leurs doléances en termes, voilà, tant au niveau social, éducation, emploi et appui juridique. Donc, l'objectif de ce système est tout d'abord d'identifier les personnes handicapées, mais également de garantir une prise en charge adaptée à leurs besoins. Donc, le deuxième système de l'Agence nationale des personnes handicapées est un système intégré de gestion de l'agence. Donc, c'est un logiciel de gestion moderne qui intègre les principales composantes, tant au niveau comme la ressource humaine, la gestion d'achat, la comptabilité, et tout ça à l'aide de ces systèmes unifiés. Les utilisateurs des différentes directions de l'agence travaillent dans un environnement applicatif intégré.
Well, I would like us to have a Q&A session for now. Thank you so much, Balkise, for your insights on how much you're incorporating technology to accommodate persons with disabilities. Now, I want us to have a Q&A session because you also need your feedback and also so that we have an interaction with our panelists and probably they can get to answer some of your burning questions. So the floor is open to you. You can have 4 questions from a beautiful audience. Kindly feel free to interact with us.
Actually, maybe till we get questions, can I do another intervention to follow up on what I was saying?
Okay, kindly.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the technology and how we can use the technology, right, to kind of enable services, and particularly when it comes to communication and hearing difficulties. So we have learned from the sessions and this conference actually, or got to know better about the different needs that are there, and there might be still the technology is advancing further and further. So when I was saying there are gaps in terms of so there are 2 things. There is access to information, right? And maybe we talked about the access to information, and then there is access to services. So when it comes to access to services, like we gave an example about the Relay Center that we did in Egypt, and by the way, it's called Wasl, which means connected in Arabic. So this is one thing, but you can go directly and use technology to enable certain services. So this is what we did with one of the services I alluded to. And this also opens the floor to innovation. So sign language, as we've heard before, it's different from a place to place. So first of all, you have to unify and put a reference to your sign language. And we did this in Egypt. There were efforts actually, and maybe in the past decade or more, to kind of unify some sort of a dictionary. And actually, this is even getting more regulated in the time being with the Ministry of Social Solidarity. But based on this, what you can do is you can, what happened is that you created a dictionary where you have this dictionary of words but recorded in videos. And when we're talking about, the technology, so the sign language is very important to have facial expressions. So you really need not just hands, not just at the moment, maybe the avatars are not really, the quality of them are not up to the needs that are needed. Maybe they'll improve in the future or in the near future. But what was done is basically you store this huge data set of words, right? And then you can do with some sort of a technological system, you can change from text to sign language. So this way, so a system, based on this, you can do an application, for example. If you go and talk to an agent, right, you can have your cell phone with an application, and the agent has an application. You can scan a QR code, and this is actually what was done, really. And then the agent can type whatever he wants to say, and it will come into sign language as videos, actually. So the other way around, it's a little bit more challenging right now, like having the sign language translated to text or to voice. But what was done is a sort of, okay, you have the application, there was some sort of an inference system or pictures, you can create some sort of words a priori at home, right? And when you go to the agent, you can have them from sign language and transfer it into text. So these are some of technologies that you can build in, but obviously if sign language to text or to speech, you know, as the technology advances, this will get with the AI, you know, technologies, this can help communication difficulties a little bit. So there were also other aspects when it came actually to work, right? So you know, getting the PWDs to get into the employment and achieve independence and to be really included. This is, I think, if you open every law that we are speaking about, you will find this in there. But really, how to do it, right? Because it takes a couple of things. It takes the workspace to be accessible, right? And you need assistive technologies for that. And also, you need to get them connected. And you need to train the PWDs themselves for maybe better job opportunities, if you wish. So again, using such platforms, there was actually another entity at MCIT that worked on a project. This was a collaborative project with the UNDP, the Ministry of Social Solidarity, the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, as well as the Ministry of Manpower, where you can do something like a LinkedIn. It's called the National PWD Network, where you do a matchmaking between employers and job seekers, if you wish. You can put awareness on it. You can put jobs. You can put some sort of trainings, things like that. So all of these are tools that can come into play and come to aid to solve some of the problems. Obviously, there will still remain challenges, and as technology advances and the digital transformation advances, this will help things to go forward. Again,
thank you so much. I want to engage our audience now. Any questions? There's a mic running around, I suppose. We have one question at the front row.
Hello, my name is Abdi, and I'm from Ethiopia. You know, our state is near Djibouti, and there was a time I visited your country, Djibouti, 2 years ago. So I was giving a presentation, but I observed that the sign language is different. Of course, we had challenges there, and when I came to the Djibouti first time, I thought that it was necessary that actually with this development, it is better to include persons with disabilities as well. Because presentations are given in a good way, but you see the government, of course, even in Djibouti, needs to change and involve us in these developments. Thank you.
Balkise, I trust you have an answer to his question.
Oui, j'ai une réponse à la question. Donc, je suis très ravie déjà de connaître qu'il a compris que le gouvernement djiboutien se donne la force pour les personnes handicapées et répond également aux besoins. Donc, cette suggestion, je le prends et nous prendrons en compte. Nous prendrons en compte et nous vous invitons à revenir et voir ensemble ce qu'on peut faire.
Thank you so much for your question. Any more questions? Any more questions from our audience? Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to ask my question. But what I'd like to ask to the panel is that how can we find catalyst methodologies that will push our persons with disabilities into the job market? Because what I've actually been picking up throughout the conference is that it's almost as if we're using a cover blanket whenever we are referring to persons with disabilities. And from a data perspective, we're not really segregating them from those that are learned, those that may have acquired a disability later, and those that have no formal training at all. But what we're simply doing now is we're looking at what is available, and it's almost as if it cuts across, but it doesn't. How can we catalyze those that are already ahead so that we can get them into places of employment? And how can we then speak to the relevant employers as well as to what type of sensitization methodologies of which we can give to them with regards to that, so that we push people? Because what we want to see as persons with disabilities is to become economic contributors, be it whether we are left hemis, right hemis, or we are visually impaired, or even if we are blind. We want to come home and carry a pack of rice. It is admirable that we are given assistive technology to move around and from a peer-to-peer perspective so that we can get wherever we want to go. But from an economic perspective, what catalyst is there in place now? Thank you.
Abane probably could give us an answer to that.
Yes, thank you. Maybe before to answer his question, maybe I can brief how can the people with disabilities to access the digital inclusion, technology inclusion agendas. Before that, we need to see how we are going to be advocate for ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, we here are two people. The one, we are people with disabilities. And other side, there is people who have no guarantee not to join people with disabilities in their life. So we need to see these two people, how to push to see inclusion in digital eras in the world. So we as Africans should have to be think about our strategies. What can we do first, and how can we push? Then the most important thing is the problem even in our country, Ethiopia, is similar with most of our African countries, is that they design the technology system to ensure inclusion of persons with disabilities. But during the design, they only sit together. Those who have no guarantee not to join tomorrow are setting the system. So the practical people has not been there. So still the gap is coming up then after. So we always need to push government to see when they design, they should have to be involved us. We need to be involved in the system to ensure inclusion of persons with disabilities, because from the deaf perspective, the only deaf people can tell you how to ensure inclusion of deaf people in the technology aspects, in the digital aspects, not me. From the visual, the same. Also from the intellectual, even the same. For the intellectual people, how, because nowadays, in the future, inclusion of digital and technology accessibility is fundamental and becoming a human right of the accessing information and participating and also getting the information. So I think we need to have together to find out the way how to push, how to address, how to have a common system. My colleague here talked from Djibouti, my home, the second home, is that clearly they are trying to ensure technology aspects to be inclusive. I really appreciate this part. But still we need to work more together to find out what we lack, and then to see, also, we don't want to forget that the professional people should be involved. Because only we work for ourselves is not bringing a change. Because when we talk about the technology, when we talk about the digital issues, also sadly, we need to involve the professional peoples in this area. So they should have to be also advisors how to be ensure inclusion. I think before COVID, we as an Ethiopian team visited Egypt. Yeah, at that time. So I'm coming quickly because of time. So
Thank
I think.
you so much, Abanir.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we're right about out of time. We have 4 minutes to our time. So before we wrap up, I want to ask one more question, and any of the panelists feel free to answer. So we know we have so many barriers, when it comes to digital inclusion for persons with disabilities. So what are some of the challenges that are faced by persons with disabilities in terms of accessibility of national and public services through digital space? And what are some of the collaborative efforts can we be able to make to actually alleviate the situation?
Thank you. Thank you. This is a very important question. The first thing we need to see the barriers. Even if you provide us the service, we have a barriers. Because the first thing is, what I said is to tackle these barriers, the first thing, we need to be involved in the designing system. Because of the designing problem, sometimes we face barriers. Like for instance, in our country, most of people with disabilities have not get a chance to learn, to educate. They are mostly illiterate because of the inclusion or in the education system was very poor. So even recently, our Ministry of Education released that the school-age children, from the school-age children of people with disabilities, children with disabilities, I mean, only 4% in the school. So this shows that how can they access then? Because when we talk about digital accessibility, it's not all about the illiteracy as well as it's all about the professionalism. But it needs to include all. So if we use these barriers to tackle, like from the education illiteracy, it should be like near to the people how they are going to be accessed. And also from different mechanisms, like for instance, the government web pages, they are not mostly accessible. For instance, in my country, the national television even, when they broadcasting, there is no sign language, for instance. So we are still fighting with this to government that to show, to inclusive us. Mostly the media's now started sign language insidely with the news, but in our country, no. So such kind of things still we are pushing. So barriers are a lot, actually, but it's good to identify with them together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your input. Dr. Abdel, probably have something more to add.
I have a quick intervention here. So I do totally agree that education is very important, and inclusion in education is very important. And maybe because it's not just about when it comes to education, there are special schools, if you wish. I'm not sure how the model works and everywhere, but getting schools to be inclusive in general, because you have various levels of disabilities, right? So this is important. And also there are undetectable disabilities, as we know. So there are learning difficulties, there are other types of disabilities. So the content itself and the availing of the content and the accessibility of the content is another aspect too. So all of these things are very important and come into place. So inclusion in the education system, and this is actually what will give more chances to be included in the market. Actually, I think in the opening, in the first day, I'll actually end with this note, because if we're speaking about 10% of the population, if you wish, 10 to 15% according to the WHO, it is not just this 10% or 15%, which is a huge workforce power, work power, it's actually their families too are affected with that. So you have maybe 30, 40% of the population, and this has a huge economical aspect. So it is not just about, it's about rights, and it's about also the whole system and economical drive as well. And this is why we are very much concerned and aware of assistive technologies, and this is maybe what I personally am involved with, is trying to avail assistive technologies as well as other accessibility to whether services or content and things like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much to our lovely panelists. That was quite an insightful 40 minutes. We've learned a lot, and I know at the end of the day, we all have to make our concerted efforts to actually make the digital space inclusive, not only for persons with disabilities, but for all citizens across the board. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and thank you to our lovely audience for listening to us. Thank you so much for the organization that actually made this possible and for making me part of it, and our lovely panelists. Thank you so much. God bless.